They call it the silent killer. Carbon monoxide leaks are dangerous and sometimes deadly. This winter, some scary brushes in Connecticut schools. In Waterbury at the Barnard School, a fifth grader collapsed and a total of 40 students were hospitalized after inhaling carbon monoxide because of a furnace leak. Most of the kids were treated and released, thankfully. And Representative Sean Williams is here to talk about some efforts with Waterbury area lawmakers to make sure that kind of thing does not happen again. Tell us about it.
Well, thanks for having me, Lori. You know, it was one of the most scary situations I can imagine. I don't even have children, but, you know, there's a lot of people who send their kids to school every day and don't realize that there's a distinct possibility that their school does not have carbon monoxide detectors. And you know, I tell people all the time, we would never say to somebody, well, you know, your kid goes to a school that doesn't have a smoke detector.
Right.
This is by far one of the biggest public safety and public health concerns that, you know, a lot of cities face. And there's no requirement to have carbon monoxide detectors. So, you know, it's a bill that is a mandate, and Pat spent a lot of time at the Capitol over the years and knows that there's a lot of talk about mandates, and I'm actually the first one to say, you know, we shouldn't have more mandates on education. But, you know, as far as public health and public safety, to me, there is nothing that is more important than that when we send our kids to schools. And, you know, it's something that we should do this year, and I think we will do this year.
I mean, but you brought up mandates, and people will say, well, this is another mandate. Is it going to be an unfunded mandate? You're going to require towns to do it when, you know, they're all have budget problems, as does the state.
Yeah, that's the way the proposal is now, and, you know, it may change in some future time, but it's not like the state is flush with cash, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. But, you know, in the city of Waterbury, for example, they estimated that the cost would be $50,000 to outfit all of their schools with carbon monoxide detectors. So, you know what I say? Let's repeal another mandate and put this one in if we have to. But, you know, this is a very significant public health and public safety concern.
Good. All right.
You know, I find it kind of ironic that we're talking about this because just this week I have an older furnace and the guy came to look at it. And he actually had to come in and test for carbon monoxide. I had no idea. So I would think that this is something that parents certainly should be concerned about. But at the same time, going back to the cost, the governor has said that the education cost sharing will not decrease. So schools are getting the same amount of state money. Where are we going to take it from is if the cities and towns have to do it.
I mean, I think if they have to do it, they'll find a way to do it. And if they don't have to do it, then many cities and towns, unfortunately, will not. But, you know, like I said, if we have to reduce spending in some other area, and by the way, Waterbury is a city that has, I think, 33 schools. So, you know, not every city and town has 33 schools.
Right.
So, you know, it's a really insignificant cost when you get into the smaller towns like where I live in Watertown. At an absolute minimum, new schools that are constructed should have to have carbon monoxide detectors, and we don't even require that.
Let's, you know, we're talking about money, and so let's talk about in Waterbury the other day. They had a very boisterous town hall meeting. And tell me what your opinion is of how those town hall meetings are going. You think the governor's doing a good job getting his point across? And I know you'll probably have some disagreements there.
Well, I got to tell you, first of all, I give the governor all the credit in the world. He's going out there, he's talking to you know, voters and taxpayers. He's, you know, inviting a lot of debate and a lot of yelling and screaming, and he's taking it, and I give him a lot of credit for that. I give him credit for proposing a budget that's balanced. I mean, he's actually a leader. He's doing a good job in terms of being a leader. Having said that, I do not agree with the tax policies that he's put forward. You know, he said during the campaign that raising taxes would be an absolute last resort. The first thing that he released prior to his budget speech in terms of a new budget was what tax increases he would have. So, you know, I give him credit for making tough decisions and being willing to actually present a balanced budget, but it's something that is going to be devastating to the Connecticut economy if it's put into place.
So where do you see areas that he should be addressing before taxes?
Well, you know, there's not one single privatization mechanism in this budget, for example. That's something we should be looking at. You know, whether or not every single state service should be privatized, I think most people would say no, it shouldn't be. And there's some examples of privatization that we shouldn't do. But, you know, to say we're not going to even look at any privatization, that's a problem. We're not selling any state assets. We're not reducing any mandates on cities and towns, specifically some of the very tedious labor mandates that we have. You know, the way that we come to contracts on binding arbitration with teachers and other public employees should be reformed. Not eliminated, but reformed. So we need to do a bunch of things to give cities and towns the ability to reduce spending, and we should be looking at reducing spending at the state level as well.
Well, to be fair to the governor, I mean, he first announced agency consolidations. It's unclear how much, if any, money that would save. And he also said that he wouldn't increase spending overall, which it ends up it's going to be 2.4% more. But that is, in essence, a $1.88 billion cut. So I guess the question would be, are the Republicans going to put forward an alternative budget that has cuts in it?
Yeah, first of all, Pat, that's capital speak. You and I have spent a lot of time at the Capitol. That's capital speak. It's a cut. It's a cut from what we would have spent, but it's not. It's still an increase over last year's budget. So the people that are at home watching this show, are saying, well, my budget didn't increase this year. This is the worst economy that many of us can remember. We are looking very seriously at presenting an alternative budget. In the last several years, we have really made our bones at the Capitol by presenting an alternative budget, by no longer being the party of no. People don't like it when politicians, lawmakers stand up and say no to somebody but don't have an alternative. We have done that every step of the way in the last 4 years, and we're certainly proposing spending cuts and offering our alternatives. By the way, the governor's been very gracious in meeting with us and accepting ideas, and obviously we're not all going to agree on everything, but we will be offering alternative budget cuts, and we've been doing that for the last 4 years. While the legislature kicked the can down the road and didn't do anything to resolve this budget deficit, when we had the opportunity, we were proposing alternatives like the privatization we just talked about, and a variety of other things. So yeah, we will be.
And will we see cuts that add up to the objections to the tax increases? In other words, Senator McKinney, who I have great respect for, had a lot of critical things to say about the governor following his meeting this past week before business leaders, but didn't say where he would cut. I mean, are you going to cut education money? Are you going to cut aid to cities and towns?
Let's make it quick because we're running out.
No, there's a whole bunch of things that we can't cut. I mean, there's, and we will be putting a document together that actually has real cuts, not just saying, no, we should cut $3 billion. We're going to put something forward that actually, does cut spending without raising taxes and balancing this on the backs of the private sector.
All right. Representative Sean Williams, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, both of you.
We appreciate your time. Up next, Connecticut is getting more diverse. What we're learning from the census numbers.